Philadelphia. So we don't hear. Is it John or Jeb? We see John, but we don't have audio for you.
I think he's on mute.
Okay. He's not on mute.
Yeah, if you need anything, you text me, and I'll communicate.
There you go. You can also do a chat up in the corner. If you go up into the left-hand corner, there's a chat box. You can click on that, and you can type anything in. All right, Tony, so you have us as your audience. What are you
going to do? Slides, I'll just kind of, I'll allude to what slide is up.
Sure. Yep, that's great. We know the order pretty well.
All right.
So I'll start you at 20 minutes, if that's all right. Should I keep the 20 minutes on the clock there?
Sure.
Okay. But if you go a little bit over, it's okay. I like this opportunity for you to be live, so I don't mind if you go over a little bit.
All right.
All right.
So Deb is going to introduce you to the audience, and then you can take it away.
Well, good morning. We say from Positive Coaching Alliance, we have Tony. Tony is a lacrosse coach, an excellent background in PCA, Positive Coaching Alliance, and here today to give us our first Double Goal Coach 1 workshop.
Thank you very much. My name is Tony Ghilani. I have about 10 to 12 years of experience coaching boys lacrosse primarily at the high school level. It also includes some 3 to 4 years at the college club level, and then 2 to 3 years from 3rd grade to 8th grade. So I kind of started in the youth program and then jumped to a college club and then came back. And my latest endeavor is with the Lakeville North High School boys varsity program, where I have the privilege of working with a longtime friend of mine who's the head coach. I'm the assistant coach, and we've been there for, this will be our 7th season. And so that's why I was really drawn to the PCA. The first time I heard the Double Go Coach seminar, we were in our 2nd or 3rd year with the program, which was largely a stepping stone at that point in their division and throughout the state. And so we were struggling to find our identity a little bit. And we had gone through a couple years of making sure the kids understood the rules and making sure they understood the skills that they needed to learn to play the game. But we needed a culture. And principle is one of the ones I have the greatest connection with, and that is honoring the game. So we just discussed the magic ratio with the E-Tank toolkit, and as with all of our principles, they're kind of metaphors. So with the elm tree is an elm tree, and the E-Tank, we use the gas tank representation. So this one's no different in that we use the acronym ROOTS to describe the way we honor the game. And we'll get into exactly what all of those letters stand for. But first thing we're going to do is watch a short video that exemplifies what PCA sees as honoring the game. So now we'll play the Mallory video. You guys watch
Mallory moment. Good one.
Okay. So, after watching that, if you were all Mallory's coach, how did that make you feel if that was one of your players and you got to watch and witness that?
Proud.
Proud? Okay. Anybody else?
I'd be a little surprised at first, but then, yeah, just a little bit like taken aback that these girls would do this without me telling them to do it as their coach. But I'd be really excited that they made that decision.
Yeah, exactly. And the first time I saw it, I thought the same thing. I was like, well, if I was her coach, I would have felt extremely proud that that's the outcome and that's what she saw in that scenario, a way to interact and really honor the game. And the important thing to recognize is that this isn't just a player coming up with this on their own. If Mallory hadn't had that system and culture built into her daily life as an athlete, she would have never come to that outcome. So what we'll learn now is what we see at PCA as the roots of honoring the game. So, like I said, our metaphor in this one is the roots. You see a picture of the flowering, strong, powerful tree, And if that tree is your program, that's what you want everybody to see your program as, then you can't have that without having this strong root system. And the roots are going to grow. That tree's alive, your program's there. The roots are going to grow on their own, but how you support that, how you promote that on a daily basis is how strong those roots are going to get. And so we get into this acronym. The R is for rules, honoring the rules of the game. One of the O's is our opponents, respect for our opponents. The other O is officials, respect for the officials. The T is for teammates, and the S is for self, having respect for self. So as we get into these a little bit, what could be the importance in honoring and having respect for the rules of the game?
Well, I think you need to know how to play the game in order to have a fair game.
Exactly. We have rules because we want a fair contest. We want the players to understand between the rules of the game and being able to interact in a fair environment. And that means there has to be rules present. How about opponents? What's important with honoring and respecting your opponents?
I think if the opponents don't show up, you don't have a game. So you have to make sure that you're glad they're there and you're ready to take them on.
Exactly. So with our opponents, a lot of times with kids at all levels, the competitiveness and the competitive spirit sometimes overpowers our respect for our opponents, and so we need to constantly bring that back and remind them that, as we say at the PCA, a worthy opponent is a gift, and we need to see it as such. Who here has played in a game where you've absolutely blown out your opponent? Anybody show hands? How about if you were on the other end of that? Have you been in a game where, yeah, the other end where your opponent just blows your team out of the water? Neither one of those is a great scenario, right? And so there are things to learn. There are takeaways from each situation. Yet when you have a competitive game, you have an opponent and a worthy opponent in both cases, it's a much better outcome. And so explaining that to your players all the time is extremely important to honoring the game. Moving on to officials. This is a big one for me and a big challenge for my program. What could be, what's the importance of honoring and respecting the officials and making sure your players understand that?
I mean, if you don't have officials, you don't have a game, but you should be respectful of officials and know that the way that you model behavior toward officials is how your team should hopefully model.
Exactly. Yeah. And with the officials, like Deborah said, there's no game without the officials. If I don't show up, another coach will come in and help out. If a player doesn't show up, there are other substitute players. If the officials don't show up, we can't play the contest. And so it's really important that our players respect them. Respect for teammates. What's a big takeaway for that? What's important about that?
I think if a team's not together, they're not going to play well.
Anybody?
I'm
cutting out.
Yeah, sorry, Kelly. Sometimes
I'll take a stab. Can you hear me?
for team. Oh, go ahead, Ruben.
I was going to say that you were talking about the importance of life lessons earlier, Tony, and I think of teamwork and being able to work as part of a team and lift each other up and make each other better. Gosh, I just think it's so important as one of those life lessons that you were referring to earlier. And so therefore, respecting teammates is critical.
Absolutely. And as I work in the construction industry in a corporate environment, and so a lot of these I try to relate to my players as examples in business, because at one point most of us are gonna have to play in the business arena, and you're not always gonna like the coworkers. You're not gonna always like your teammates on a team, but you do need to get along and you do need to respect one another and find a way to cooperate to accomplish corporate goals and accomplish your team goals in this situation. How about self? Respect for self. Why is that important?
I think it goes down to what you believe in.
Well, I think respect. Yep. What she said.
Yeah. So yeah, with respect for self, this one when the first time I heard the presentation, I failed to really come up with examples in what I had seen in that, and part of that I think is because this is one that I personally struggle with, and it's how are you talking to yourself? is the way I've used it to relate to my players is, when something goes wrong or you make a mistake or you fail in a sense, how are you talking to yourself afterwards? What's that level of self-talk going on in your head? Because if you're not filling your own emotional tank and you're not cutting yourself some slack, and if you're not understanding how failure is going to make us better, right? Going back to that elm tree model, then how are you going to help your team? How are you going to better yourself as an athlete or as an individual? So having respect for yourself, sometimes we're harder on ourselves than anybody else. We're harder on ourselves than we are on other people. And so it's important to really, if you have respect for every one of these other components of the game in your team, then you kind of have to practice what you preach with yourself as well. So take a couple minutes here and either chat amongst yourselves or maybe use the piece of paper in front of you and write down and think about your own experiences with your programs, your teams, and write down maybe the top two or three components of the root system that you struggle with or your team struggles with the most. So take a few minutes now and think about that a little bit and think about ways that in each of those components, how have you struggled and what has been a challenge for you in the past or even maybe right now. And then we'll just kind of, if you're still writing, continue writing as we go here and jump in if you need to. How many of you wrote down the rules? Like the rules are a challenging part for you. Okay. Kelly, can we hear, would you mind sharing an example of how the rules are a challenge for your program?
I'm starting out with third and fourth graders, and they don't know the rules of lacrosse. So every single day I'm trying to teach them a skill, and I'm realizing that they don't know the rules. So we have to really, it has to slow down practice, and we have to stop, and we have to talk about the actual rules that you have to abide by. And it's just it's a time sucker. So it's one of those things I don't want to deal with all the time, but it's really, really important. They know you just can't, bowl the girl over to get to the ball. So.
Yeah, and you touched on it a little bit that you have to, it is kind of a time suck, and as coaches, this is why we struggle to enforce that part of it, of honoring the game, is because in practice, we don't want to stop practice every 2 seconds to call a penalty, throw a flag, explain what the issue is to the players. But if you're not doing that, at least to some degree, then when they get in the game and they have that same disregard for the rule set, then how do we expect them to have any other outcome for it? So maybe you don't need to stop practice every time and explain it in depth, but it's a quick little note. Let them keep playing, but make sure you're highlighting it. And then when you do have those little breaks in practice, touch on at least 2 or 3 of the main ones that were broken in that last contest. Any questions with the rules? Any issues with that? How many people had opponents? Respect for opponents is a challenge for your program. Anybody?
I did.
For me, this was a big one. You do? Go ahead and explain.
Yeah, I did. I had that one as my top one. We just tend to demonize our opponent. We tend to be taught that at Stanford we have to hate Cal, we have to hate UCLA, we have to hate USC. The commentators, the media plays into that, and it's just a battle to get our players to see their opponent as merely that, as an opponent that is trying to win a game just like we are.
Right, and we model this as coaches. A lot of times it's a matter of stepping back and taking a look at how we talk about our opponents and our upcoming teams when we're presenting it to our team. How are we promoting our potential or our next opponent that we're going to play? Go ahead.
So you said you coach at Lakeville North, so what do you say when you play Lakeville South?
It's a really, really spirited rivalry, and it's one that's embraced between the community and the players as well. A lot of those players grew up together playing in elementary school and school. They didn't even split off until they get past the 8th grade level. So it is a huge contest for us, and for that reason exactly. So what we tell the kids is, you know these guys. we're friends of yours. Some of them are friends of yours. At the end of the day, you're going to shake hands. You're going to still hang out on the weekends. I mean, they're that close, a lot of them. So we don't necessarily have an issue with them hating each other, but the game gets chippy, the game gets physical, and so we try to head that off on the front end by explaining, that's not our game plan. Let's make sure that we stay rooted in our game plan and not get caught up in the verbals and get caught up in the chippy play, and make sure that we're constantly reminding of them. Every stop play, every time they're coming off a shift, every instance we see on the field, we're constantly checking it throughout the contest. So that's one thing that we made huge strides in over the last few years. When I first started there, I had no idea about the rivalry, so it took me a few years to get into it myself and then understand why there was such spirit with that. And it's just something that we have to make a conscious effort every second of the game to make sure we're checking that. So you have to focus on that, and the things that you want your players to portray, that's what you need to drill in every day. So we're constantly talking about it with them leading up to that game. We know what's on the back of their mind, and so in film sessions and practice, we're always reminding them that this is a worthy adversary, this is somebody we want to play and we want to have a competitive game with every year, and so let's treat it as we all want to keep that game going. Anything else with opponents? Moving on to officials. Anybody write down officials?
I had officials.
Okay. What's the issue your program has?
One making stuff, but
Yep.
I'm going to be someone else. I think the problem is that I feel like sometimes officials, their calls are just wrong, and so I feel like if I don't voice my displeasure, that they're going to think that I don't care or that it's okay. So it's a hard one for me.
Yeah, and that's how we are as coaches too. I mean, we're programmed. We want to make that correction. We know the rule. We're sitting on the outside. We see it better, And a lot of times it's hard for us to stop ourselves from saying something. But there are points in every game in every sport where it is okay to bring that up to an official, and there are times where it's acceptable to voice your opinion in a structured, professional manner. And so one thing we've done in the past is we've taken notes throughout the game. So we'll write things down, and in between quarters and timeouts, you're allowed to address that with the lead official at that point. Say, hey, here's some things I want to highlight. If it's really a point where this happens every once in a while too, where the game's getting out of control and it's for the player's safety's sake that we're concerned if the officials don't catch this soon enough, then the game's going to get out of hand, people are going to get hurt. And so we've had officials really, really accepting of that feedback, as long as it's at the right time and you're coming on with a professional attitude and you're not barking it across the field in real time. Then approach it professionally, and they'll take the constructive criticism, I think, professionally. That's the feedback I've seen anyway. Anybody else with officials? Another thing so we've done with the kids is if your team has trouble relating to the officials or respecting the officials, one thing we've done is have them meet the officials before the contest, introduce themselves. So the captains are always out there in the beginning, but it's another thing to have your team introduce themselves before the game starts or before warm-up start. They can come out and introduce themselves, put a name and a face to that person. Makes it a little bit easier for them to respect them in the heat of the battle. And then if you have individuals on your team that have issues with that, a great tool that I heard is having that player in practice then during scrimmages practice being the official. And then they'll understand how difficult that is to make those calls in real time, and then hopefully have a little bit of empathy towards that position. How about teammates? Anybody have any issues on their program or in their program getting your kids to respect teammates? Can you explain what's your issue?
Yeah, my teammates compete. The kids on my team just compete against each other.
The kids on my team compete against each other.
And it's not always a good way. Like they're really out for blood sometimes, and they're 9 years old, and I'm just shocked how much they'll like diss the other player just so that they look good when they made the right play or something.
Yeah, exactly. Does anybody do any bonding activities with the kids? Do anything outside of sports? That's one thing that we found is a huge way to get kids to respect their teammates is to get them outside of that competitive environment, get them relating to one another, in a different avenue. So play a different sport, maybe go bowling, go to the movies, organize a group sleepover, stuff like that. We also do the buddy system is another idea that we promote, is having kids partner up throughout practice and in group workouts. It's another way to get them to relate and get to know one another on a personal level rather than just as another opponent on a daily basis. And then also you can couple that with the E-Tank model too, and they can help promote pumping each other up and supporting each other's emotional tanks. Those are all, kind of ways that we've fostered respect for teammates on our team. And the thing with teammates and opponents is we're going to see that throughout life, right? So our opponents, we're going to have opponents in the corporate life, we're going to have coworkers in the corporate life, and we're not always going to like that person, but we need to respect them and we need to find ways to cooperate with them. We don't want to teach our kids to just have adverse feelings about anybody in a different colored jersey or from a different town or a different state, right? And we need our kids to understand the importance of cooperation with their own teammates. So those are things we're constantly trying to make relatable for them. How about self? Did anybody have self written down? Top 3 issues? Anyone? So like I said earlier, with respect for self, you'll find that a lot of these players, you promote what you want to see and what you don't want to see, and so they're going to hammer on themselves a lot. They're going to be harder on themselves than you are or than their parents are, and so it's important to make sure you're constantly asking them. I love asking a player, how are you talking to yourself right now? What's going on? What's the conversation happening in your head? You get a penalty on the field, I always talk to the player while he's sitting in the box. What's going on right now? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? How can we flush that, right? Go back to the rituals, go back to parking issues, and have that conversation with them. Bring them back home, and they understand that's right. Okay, this is that time. This is that time when my emotions are running crazy, that I need to come back and check that conversation in my head and make sure that it's supportive and I'm promoting respect for myself. Any other questions before we move on from that? So, like we discussed, this is our culture. Okay, this is how we describe the culture we're trying to promote at PCA. And sometimes there's no better way to say it than just the way we do things here. And so you're going to have kids challenge you, you're going to have parents challenge you, and the more you throw out real answers, sometimes they just aren't going to see it your way. And this is just the way we do things here. And so it's totally okay to describe that sometimes when you're having problems. That's how we describe our culture, is based on honoring the game through the root system and describing our culture and making sure that's something that we're actively participating in. Because like we alluded to earlier, you're going to have a culture, you're going to have a root system, that's going to develop whether you're a part of it or not. So you need to get actively involved in that so you end up having the culture and the roots in your program that you want.
Awesome. Kelly,
All
were you
right.
ringing the bell?
Yeah, that was time, but I just wanted him to finish his thought. I hate to cut him off. I hate to cut people off halfway through their thoughts. All right, thanks, guys. Deborah, you're there right in front of Tony. I'd love to hear some feedback from you first.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I mean, usually I always hear the other principals, so to hear the principal you picked it really makes me excited. And I'll be honest, I've been doing this for 2.5 years, and I learned so much you just doing this than any other trainer and any other workshop I've been to.
All right.
And I think some of that is because this is the third principal, right? And either trainers are behind in time and they got to go quick, or they really like the other principals, but I really liked how you went through this and really explained it and provided examples and really, gave like tips and tools. And if I'm a coach, like when you say respect for self, like I always just nod, but you were like, well, do you know what that means? And you explained it, and that's where I was like, God, I really didn't know. I mean, I just felt like I learned information from you instead of you just reading the screen to me and saying respect for officials. I mean, you told me what it meant, and then how, as a coach, I could do that with my team. And so I really like that. I think you seem really relaxed, which is good, which means you're really confident. I don't think you have that I'm an Energizer bunny presenter style, which I think is okay. Like, we have a couple who are like that, and I think that setting works well in like high school kids. But when you're talking to adults, I mean, I really like your style. It seems relaxed and confident. And I like that. And I think you have a solid background. Like, I liked hearing that you coach really all levels. You know, and if I'm a coach, right away I think you related to a lot of people in the room, whether you coach for youth, high school, or college. So I think that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I only have one, I guess, negative per se, is you refer to it as the PCA. It's really hard to get rid of the. There's no the. It's just PCA, or positive coaching. So it's like fingernails on a chalkboard whenever I hear it. I'm like, no, the. But otherwise, I was really impressed. So especially, I'm just thrilled that you picked this principal. So.
All right, thanks. And Jeb, I don't think we can hear you. Can we?
I can hear you.
Jeb did text me and said that he liked his. Here, I'll read it here. He just said he's confident, well-paced, handling the material fairly well. So that's very good.
All right, thank you. Ruben, did you want to go next?
Ruben, you guys are up.
Okay, yeah, you know, I think to follow up when you said, Deb, you're right. Tony's not the Energizer Bunny style, okay? So Tony, your strength is your conversational tone, which I think people like having conversations, and you're going to be, and you made this piece of the workshop a conversation. You pulled us all in throughout from start to finish, and you come across as, instead of hey, I'm an expert coach, I know how to do it, let me tell you how to do it, you come across as, you know, one of a group of coaches that are in the room today, and you're helping us explore some things together and learn from each other. So I think that's a real strength that you know, that you're gonna be able to capitalize on. Yeah, I like how you know, Roots can. Deb alluded to this too. Roots is a place where you can do a little mini lecture, and you definitely stayed away from that. You did the quick overview, and then you started asking us questions about each one. I thought that was very effective. Hey, you know, when you asked us to write down the 2 or 3 that are the most challenging for us, it worked. It worked. And an idea I have is to have us actually zero in on the one that is the most challenging for us. You know, instead of going from 5 to 3, why not go from 5? Okay, let's go to the 1, or maybe 2. But that's just an idea, because what you did certainly worked. Okay, and then just a couple of fine-tuning things, Tony. First time, I'm going to quote you. The first time I heard this presentation, what do you think I don't like about that sentence? The first time, Kelly knows. The first time I heard this presentation, blah blah blah. What do you think I'm not a fan of there? Tony?
You guys, I hate to say this, but like, we heard half of that. So sometimes the audio quality is going in and out for us, so we didn't hear all of that.
Okay, let me try it again. I'm going to quote Tony. At one point in the workshop, he said, you know, the first time I heard this presentation, blah, blah, blah. And so my question to Tony is, what do you think I didn't like about that phrase?
The first time, I don't know.
No? Kelly knows exactly what I'm talking about. Deb, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
During this presentation, we're going to do this, this, and this. Thank you for being here at this presentation.
Oh, the word presentation should be a workshop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah. I really encourage you to use the word workshop over and over. And my last choice is actually, presentation may not be my last choice. I mean, I would prefer lecture even less, or dissertation. You know, but presentation connotes that, okay, you're going to present to us,
Mm-hmm.
which you didn't do. You conversed with us, you explored with us. So sorry for the long-winded making of a simple point. And then one last little fine-tuning thing. Kelly at one point gave the example of the players on her team really getting on each other and competing with each other over the top competition with each other. And I thought that was a nice opportunity, Tony, for you to tap into the wisdom of the group and say something like, wow, that's an interesting challenge. How would the rest of you handle that if that was happening on your team? And then I think what you'll get, Tony, is a lot of the points that you would make, you give us the opportunity to make them. And then you could always add on or fill in the blanks that, as appropriate. But I thought that was a real opportunity for you to capitalize on. Tony, before I turn it over to Kelly, just loved your poise, your comfort level in front of the group. Thought it was a very strong outing.
Yeah, Ruben, I really agree with your comment. I mean, I loved how he gave all those tips and examples on each principle, but it's a good idea. That's a great way to engage the audience. Is, well, what do you guys think? And then fill in if you feel like pieces were missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tony, just
I think last
let
time
us
I
go,
did.
let us go
My
first.
all I did ask for them, and then now I kind of went too far the other way. Maybe I'm honing in on it.
There's a blend. There's a blend. That's why we practice. Tony, I think I saw a big improvement over you sitting at your desk and you being just in front of Deborah even for a live person. I think not my biggest, but one of my critiques of you last time was that you didn't look like you were having fun. So I saw more of your sense of humor coming out. You were smiling a little bit more. You were just more relaxed, and I knew that would happen as soon as you got in front of people. So that was good to see. And I also think your pace picked up. You kept things moving a lot quicker. I think last time you spent a lot more time on each R and O and O. So I think you did a nice job at keeping that moving. And I like your conversation. I really liked the activity where you write it down. From a trained teacher, I like using multiple intelligences. So you had us write down what are the 2 or 3 you have a challenge with. Then maybe I would do what Ruben said. Now pick the one, because they've gotten a chance to think about it and write it down. And I actually did. I sat there and wrote down rules, why, teammates, why. I'd like to do the activities that you have me do. But if I were to pick one, the biggest issue for me right now would be teammates. So after I've had a chance to think and write it down, then maybe say, okay, if you had teammates, let's get you guys over here to discuss that. Let's get you guys over, whatever I'm saying. I like the way you had them write it down first. I think that's a good way to do it. The one thing, and this is not a critique on you, this is actually a praise on you, but I'm going to explain why. What we see a lot of trainers do, especially with roots, is say, this is what you need to do. You need to respect the rules. Why? And they put it out to the audience, and they say, well, for safety, for structure. Okay, this. You also have to respect opponents. You also have to respect officials, and why? And they say all these reasons why. So especially when it comes to opponents, and I heard you do this a little bit. You said, I like to teach my team that it's really important to respect opponents. My question is, why? As adults, we know why, but if we're specifically talking about teaching it to high school kids, high school boys specifically, why? What's the main drive? Why do we want them to respect their opponents? We all know it's the right thing to do. It's so that the officials will leave and say, boy, that was a really respectful, nice team. But how can your guys, high school players, if they're more respectful of their opponents, what's in it for them?
Yeah, they get better as players. If you promote respect for your opponents, then your opponents actually, they'll play harder. You have a better contest, and then your players get better after that experience.
Bingo. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. If we're talking about trying to be the best coaches we can be, teaching our kids to be really strong competitors and actually have their performance improve, it's the teams that are not being respectful of their opponents that are wasting all that time, and they're bringing their opponents down. So their opponent's level of play is not as strong, so therefore your level of play is not that strong. So I just picked that up specifically when you were talking about opponents. I think because I do a lot of athlete workshops, and when I frame the idea of roots to the athletes, I like to always say, what's in it for them? not just that you're going to get the Good Citizenship Award because you respected the 5 areas of honoring the game the most, but there's actual knowledge, there's actual research tools, and these tools are going to help you play better, perform better, and have a better outcome to your season. So I just wanted to put that in there. But I really do like the way you connected it to the corporate world. You mentioned a few times that this is something you teach your players, that you're not always going to have people at work that you agree with. You're not always going to have a boss that you agree with what they say. So I think that was really a strong point that you brought up a few times. I thought that was great. Only thing I would like to see is you bring in some more sport-specific examples other than lacrosse examples from you. So again, that could be a reason that you put it out to the audience and say, okay, give me a soccer example of like where on a soccer team, how could you show respect for the officials, or or basketball, or just to pull out some other examples, because we know that you're a strong lacrosse guy, so I think it's great to pull in other things too. And the only other thing that I picked out, and I actually you mentioned it twice, you talked about respecting opponents, and then you said, we want you guys to respect your opponents so that in the heat of the battle, you know how to respect your opponents. And one of the reasons that I like to bring up, the reason that we look at our opponents as the enemy is because we look at the game as a battle. So if you're looking at the game as a battle, like a war ground, of course, the opponent is going to be enemy. So I would probably, even though it's just probably, we said the heat of the battle, the heat of the contest, the heat of the fight, whatever it is, if you're really, as a culture, trying to talk about your opponents are a gift, your opponents are a privilege to be able to play against, your opponents will make your play better, I would just suggest that you take out kind of that battle tone or the battle suggestion to your voice.
So Kelly, you gave us 3 examples there.
Yeah.
Battle, heat of the contest, and war. So of the 3, the one that would be most appropriate would be contest.
Right. Competition. In the heat of competition. Yeah.
The game. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, in the heat of the
Thank you.
game. Yep. Yeah, that's what I would do. And the other thing, just to bring up, because you're dealing with high school, because you do coach high school kids, I just had a situation where I gave an athlete workshop to a private all-boys school in Chester County, Pennsylvania. And this coach actually got back to me by email last week. He had such a rivalry with another high school that he came to me as a PCA trainer and said, I don't know what to do. Who's the athletic director? He said, I don't know what to do because the social media is blowing up over this contest. There was a championship game that was supposed to happen on Friday, and he said, I cannot even keep track of how many slurs and smashes, and all these kids are like just busting on each other the whole time on social media. They're giving threats, we're going to kill you, you're dead, you guys suck, blah, blah, blah. That he actually, as the athletic director, canceled the championship game for basketball on Friday because of the disrespect for opponents. So the only reason I'm sharing that with you is because I was really surprised that it had gotten to that. But a lot of times coaches think like, oh, friendly rivalry, it's good. We always fight with that team. And there are schools that it actually gets to the point where they have to cancel the game, the championship game, because of the disrespect for opponents. And that was mostly through social media. So I think if you're going to be, I can see you in the future, Tony, talking to high school athletes, and I just thought it was a good story to share with who you're talking with. But as I said, I'm really excited. I think you're going to be a great part of the team out there. And I'm excited to get you in front of coaches and more than one person, and see what you do in a room full of people. But I think you're definitely on your way, and I see you just getting better and better each time. I don't know if you caught all that or if I got cut off, but all right. So
Thanks,
Deb,
Kelly.
yeah, thank you so much for having him there.
You'll make sure that you write out you'll write all this up, right? Because sometimes we had a hard time hearing you guys with the audio.
Sure. I'll write some notes up. Absolutely. And this is recorded as well. So Tony can go back and watch the recording, and I'm pretty sure all the audio will come through on the recording. So he can always watch this too.
Hey, Deborah, thank you very much for setting this up. I know it's not, it's not easy and always convenient for you, but it's just so good to give our trainers this opportunity. And I don't know if I should say Jeb or John, but thank you
Jeb,
very much for joining us. What's that, Deborah?
It's Jeb, J-E-B.
Yes, gotcha. Okay, and I'm reading Jeb's note. Jeb, it's just so awesome to have you give us your time this morning and give Tony your time and attention. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So, Tony, we'll be in touch, and we'll be getting you scheduled to be in front of live people. The next step is for you to co-present a portion of the workshop. And I think, I feel strongly that I think you'll be able to do more than one principal, maybe half of a workshop with a certified trainer, and then we'll get you on your way to being certified to be able to go out and do this on your own.
All right, great.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you.